So, as I said, I come from Brazil. I would like to present some data about Brazil. Brazil is a biodiversity hotspot. We have 6 biomes in Brazil: Amazônia, Cerrado, Mata Atlântica, Caatinga, Pampas, and Pantanal. Brazil hosts between 15 and 20% of the world's biological diversity. We have a federation of 26 states and a federal district. We speak Portuguese, and Brazil borders all other countries in South America except Ecuador and Chile. Unfortunately, ranks at 7th place at Gini coefficient. That's a coefficient that rates social inequality. So Brazil has a high level of social inequality. The mining industry in Brazil is very important. Mining production in Brazil reached $41 billion in 2020. And the mining industry is centered on the extraction of iron, but Brazil is also an important exporter of nickel and other minerals. As I said, I work for the Minas Gerais State Prosecutor's Office. Minas Gerais is a large state, is the 2nd state in Brazil regarding the extent of mining areas. The first one is Pará. Minas Gerais' capital is Belo Horizonte and is the 3rd largest in Brazil, with just over 5,008,100 inhabitants. I work for the Ministério Público of Minas Gerais. It's the Minas Gerais State Prosecutor's Office. It's a similar institution as the US Prosecutor's Office, but it's a unique institution too, because it has some characteristics that is unique for this institution in Brazil. Our mission is to defend the juridical order, the democratic regime, and the inalienable social and individual interests. We need to act from the beginning of the conflict, which means that if, for instance, a crime is committed against the environment, we need to act from the beginning to ensure the reparation, the recovery of the environment, and also to ensure punishment for the guilty. We can conduct negotiations, mediations, in criminal and also in civil cases. It's our mission to protect the environment and other fundamental rights. The United States Prosecutor's Office has a cohesive structure of environmental units. There are prosecutors for the environment distributed throughout the state in its 853 municipalities. So this structure is divided in this way. We have 3 state-level coordinating offices for cultural and historic heritage, housing and urban development, animal protection. And we also have 9 regional coordinating offices. The state of Minas Gerais is divided by hydrological basins, and for each hydrological basin, we have a prosecutor that coordinates the environmental area to help to act with the regional prosecutor, the prosecutor in place. So from December 2016 to December 2020, I coordinated this structure, the CAOMA, the Environmental Center of Support of the MPNG, and also the task forces that were created by my institution to search for reparation for the mining disasters that happened in Brazil. The Mariana disaster happened in the 5th November 2015. The Mariana disaster was the biggest environmental disaster in Brazil history, the biggest environmental disaster in the southern hemisphere. A dam in the Germano mining complex located in the city of Mariana, Minas Gerais, owned by Samarco. Samarco is a company that is a joint venture of Vale and BHP. Had a failure, and this failure had as consequence the leakage of approximately 55 million cubic meters of tailings that were transported through the Doce River and its tributaries for about 663.2 kilometers from the Fundão Dam in Mariana to the Atlantic Ocean in the city of Linhares, Espírito Santo. So here you can see the city of Linhares, the Atlantic Ocean, and here the Germano complex in Mariana. Two states were really impacted, damaged by this leakage. Here we have a pipeline that connects the mine complex in Mariana to the terminal, the port in the Espírito Santo state, the city of Ubi. As I said, I was appointed to be the leader, the coordinator of this task force that already exists when I joined the task force. So I saw the necessity, the need to a restructuration of the task force. And we did it in 4 action axes. We needed to assure the Germano complex safety, because the failure of the Fundão dam impacted, damaged other tailings dams in the complex. So it was a risk that other leakages could happen. We need to monitor the socio-economic reparation actions, to monitor the environmental reparation actions, and also the environmental process for Samarco to resume its activities in the Germano complex. How we did that? Our methodology was centered in the integration and collaboration among all involved prosecutors. In different actions, for instance, human rights protection, protection of health, protection of education, and we had monthly meetings to discuss and define the strategies and activities of the task force. We also had the participation, intense participation of the affected communities in the decision-making process. You can see here a photo of one of these meetings with the prosecutors that worked in the task force, this other one with the prosecutors, and this meeting is with some representatives of civil society to discuss the strategies of the task force. We were doing our work when, in January 25th, 2019, another disaster happened in Minas Gerais, this time in the city of Brumadinho. This disaster was the rupture, the failure of 3 dams, B1, B4, and B4A, owned by Vale, the same company that owns Samarco, the previous disaster company. And this failure had very, very important consequences. 207 people lost their lives. More than 10 million cubic meters of tailings were released at the Paraopeba River basin, destroying the Paraopeba basin that is responsible for the water supply of 50% of the population of the metropolitan area of Belo Horizonte. The metropolitan area of the Belo Horizonte, the capital of Minas Gerais, is served by two supply systems. One is the Paraopeba system, Paraopeba basin, and the other one is the Rio das Velhas system, Rio das Velhas basin. On the aftermath of the disaster, MPMG, the State Prosecutor's Office, filed 2 lawsuits against Vale. And we blocked 10 billion reais from Vale. 5 billion reais were blocked on the same day of the disaster, and 5 billion in the next day. 5 billion for the emergency environmental measures and 5 billion for the socioeconomic emergency measures to repair the affected communities. After disaster, an interinstitutional task force was created. This task force had representatives from the Federal Prosecutor's Office, the State Prosecutor's Office, the Public Defender, firemen, civil police, military police, federal police forces. Also, commissions of representatives of the affected communities were created since the beginning of the measures to repair the consequences of this disaster. We negotiate with Vale, and on 15 February, the first civil agreement was signed between the State Prosecutor's Office of Minas Gerais and Vale. And this agreement has as object to ensure independent auditing for all the environmental recovery works that Vale was conducting in the Paraopeba Basin and in the mining complex. The rupture of B6, another dam that was damaged by the failure of the other 3 dams, was avoided with this work of auditing. A river water treatment station was built for the integral treatment of the Paraopeba River water. This treatment station was in operation in April. More than only 3 months after the disaster, we got this new treatment station. The premise of not impacting new areas during the recovery works was agreed with Vale. As I said, the disaster had as consequence a huge impact on the water supply system. So, Copasa, the company responsible for the water supply in Minas Gerais, warned MPMG about a possible shortage of water in 2020. So, we started negotiations with Vale, and another civil agreement was signed on July 8th. For the reestablishment by Vale of the water supply to the metropolitan area of Belo Horizonte. A new water plant upstream the impacted area was built. Other agreements were signed with Vale to have complete reparation. It's necessary to understand the environment before the event that damaged it. So Vale established a wide water and sediment quality monitoring network in the Paraopeba Basin, whose data were controlled by the company. It was an emergency, so Vale needed to build this network to monitor the water and sediment, but we needed to transfer this structure to the state, the competent authorities. So we negotiated with Vale, and on November 13, we signed another civil agreement to transfer the systems to the state agency, IGAM, it is the Water Institute of Minas Gerais, and all the money that needed to do this, to hire new employees and everything, equipment, was costed by Vale. Also, a human health risk assessment was conducted. We needed to do this health assessment to understand the consequence of the disaster. So now, external audit company is monitoring this work with the state bodies, the Secretariat of Environment, and also the Secretariat of Health of Minas Gerais, the affected communities, and their technical assistance. This work guaranteed that truthful and reliable data will be shared with the public authorities. The elaboration of the risk assessment will allow the damage to human health and ecosystem to be properly identified so that effective remediation measures can be put in place. During the investigations that the NPMG conducted after the disaster, we discovered that several other VALE'S dams in Minas Gerais were in worse safety conditions than the ones that collapsed in Brumadinho. So NPMG filed more than 20 lawsuits against Vale all over the state. During 2 years, almost 2 years, we negotiated with Vale and signed more than 27 civil agreements with the company. Now, currently, all Vale's dams are being audited by truly independent companies that report to the NPMG and other state bodies. So, with this work, we discovered many problems in more than 100 Vale's dams in Minas Gerais, and some measures works to repair these problems to ensure safety of the dams are being conducted. Another thing that we discovered after the disaster is that flood patches from the dams in Brumadinho did not match the reality after the failure. The mining companies needed to perform a dam break study and a flood patch. And we discovered that the methodology they used had many flaws. So the flood patch is essential to do all the emergency preparedness plans and everything. We negotiated with Vale and a civil agreement was signed to define new dam break methodology. This methodology was required for all dams located in Minas Gerais, and after that, this methodology was incorporated by the Federal Mining Agency in Brazil, ANM, and now is a requirement of the national regulation. And PMG also helped to lead the efforts to build a new state policy on dam safety. And this law was signed 1 month after the Brumadinho disaster. In fact, the project of law was presented to the state Congress in 2016, in July 2016, but only after the Brumadinho disaster, this law passed, 1 month after the disaster. And Minas Gerais became the first state to prohibit the construction of upstream raised tailings dams like the one that collapsed in Brumadinho, the one. These upstream tailings dams, they are not safe. All the experts of the world, they say that this technology is not safe. And now it's forbidden in the state to build new upstream raised tailings dams. The National Congress adopted this provision and spread it to the entire country through the new federal policy for dam safety that passed in 2020. The name of this new state policy is Sea of Mud Nevermore Law, in Portuguese, Lei Mar de Lama Nunca Mais. And now with this law, mining companies should financially ensure the reparation of potential damage to the environment and to the affected communities. They also should ensure the future decommission of their dams after operation. The previous assessment of best available technology needs to be demonstrated by the mining company before choosing to build a dam. New tailings dams are forbidden if there are people living in the self-rescue zone. For me, that's the most important statement of this law, because the self-rescue zone is the area downstream the dam, 10 kilometers area downstream the dam. And if this law has passed before, maybe 207 lives were saved. The law also forbids the upstream raised tailings dams, and it is mandatory now the decommission of all upstream tailings dams located in Minas Gerais state. Thank you very much. I'll be glad
Okay. Hello everyone. My name is Pedro Rossi. I'm from Chile. I appreciate the invitation made by the Latin American and Caribbean Studies program of University. Well, I want to tell you a little bit about my work and what I've done in the Ministry of Environment in Chile. I want to tell you a little thing about my work, and then we're going to relate it with some fun ideas about Chile, some fun facts about Chile, so you can know a little bit more about my country. But it's me. I'm a lawyer from Pontificia Universidad Católica del Paraíso. I am a legislative advisor in the Ministry of Environment. I used to be a legislative advisor in the Ministry of Environment. We have a change of government. Now there's a new administration in government. But I worked for 2 years in the Ministry of Environment in Chile. Well, the first fun fact about Chile is that we have the biggest earthquake in the history of humanity that is registered. It was in Valdivia, in Chile. In Chile, we have this saying that if an earthquake is not about 7.5, we don't get up from our city. So we are used to have earthquakes in Chile. But this was a very big earthquake. It was an earthquake with also a tsunami. Well, what it means to be a legislative advisor? You have to advise the minister and the undersecretary on the legislative and pre-legislative discussions. I have to review the bills, have to take part in meetings with other ministries and with the advisors of all senators and deputies. I have to coordinate with the divisions of the ministry the review of bills related to environmental issues. I have to assist to the committees in the Congress, in the Senate, and the Chamber of Deputies. So you can see some pictures in the discussions of some bills in Congress. Well, some of the new laws that was approved in the last administration when I was an advisor is first the light pollution law, the urban wetlands law, the single-use plastic law, the cigarette butts law, and lately the framework law on climate change that was approved like a few weeks ago. I'm going to talk a little bit about some fun facts, and they are going to relate it with some of these laws. First, fun fact about Chile: Chile is the world's capital of astronomy. Almost half of the biggest telescopes are located in Chile, especially in the north. And the experts think that probably in the future, 70% of the observatories are going to be located in Chile. That's because we have mountains in one side, we have the Pacific Ocean in the other, so that creates like a window for the world, for the universe. That's why we have this problem of light pollution, because the cities are growing, and that's increasing the light pollution. You can see here, this is Chile. You can see that it's more likely in the center, in Santiago, the capital that is located the most population. But in general, we have a lot of light pollution, especially in the US. That's why Chile has the opportunity to be the center of astronomy. But with expansion of cities and mining, this can affect these observatories. That's why the Ministry of Environment is working on a new regulation of light pollution. And also, we approved a law that established areas with scientific and research value for astronomical observation. That means that we're going to locate some areas that are very important for astronomical observation, and they're going to have some restrictions to build new projects or in that areas. Another fun fact about Chile is that between 10 and 20% of our territory has wetlands. These ecosystems are very important because they maintain a lot of biodiversity. And more than 500 hectares of these wetlands are located in the urban areas. There's a lot of pressure in Chile to build in some areas like wetlands, and that have consequences because then people they build houses or buildings, and then they get when there's rain, they get affected by landslides or humidity. That's why we supported the approval of this urban wetlands law. That this law provides a set of minimal criteria to protect these areas in the urban sectors. The municipalities apply to protect these areas, and then the Ministry of Environment analyzes the solicitation, and they declare the official like urban wetland. The Ministry of Environment can also do it by itself. And at this time, I think we have more than 30 urban wetlands that we declared in the last year. Another fun fact about Chile is that we produce more municipal solid waste than Japan and South Korea. They have a bigger income level, so that's why it's an issue in Chile, the trash. And it is estimated that in 2018, about 170 million meals were ordered from restaurants. And this grows a lot with the pandemic because a lot of people are ordering like takeout, or with Uber Eats also is being like increasing a lot. That's why we approved this single-use plastic law. That's this focus in two main areas. First, restaurants that sell food, so they restrict the aims to limit the production of disposable products and regulate plastics. And the second is regulate the plastic bottles. You can see now here the products that we are gonna restrict from. It's a long process. The first period started a few months ago. The final applying of the law is gonna be in 2 years. But for example, if you eat inside a restaurant, these products are bad. If you use plastic for, especially for takeout, they're gonna be it's required to be compostable. And also, the plastic bottles have to be elaborated with a percentage of plastic used from other bottles. It goes bottle to bottle. And also in Chile, we have a lot of reusable bottles. It's very common in Chile. So now that's the idea is to, because some supermarkets are using it, but some not. So we were trying to incentivize that all the supermarkets, especially, use this system. So they can start using reusable bottles, plastic for soda, especially. Another fun fact about Chile is that it's the longest and narrowest country in the world. The width of the United States of America is only about 27 miles, longer than the length of Chile. You can see here, like in the end is in the Patagonia, near the Antarctica, and the north is in the desert, close to Peru. So it's a very long country, and we have a lot of coast. That's why we have a big problem with cigarette butts. That is one of the, when you make like cleaning in the beaches, one of the things that you must see is cigarette butts. So in February of this year, they approved this law. They call it "Chao colillas," like bye butts. And it was very interesting. It has a lot of support, especially in the public, because a lot of people, when they go to the beach, the kids take these butts and they contaminate. And one butt can pollute almost 50 liters of water. So it's very complex issue. So with this law, you can't throw butts in the beaches or in the public or in streets, and you'll get sanctioned. And if you get caught, one of the options you have to you can get sanctioned, or you have to go clean some beaches like a community service. So this is a law that was approved recently. Another fun fact about Chile: we have the driest desert in the world, the Atacama Desert. But this driest desert in September normally gets rain, and there's a phenomenon called Desierto Florido, desert in blue. And you can see the pictures that the desert gets, it appears a lot of flowers that you can see in the picture. And this was approved like 2 weeks ago. It's the framework law on climate change. This bill is very important because Chile is very vulnerable to climate change. We have mountains, we have islands, we have a lot of air pollution. So we need to focus, especially in climate change. We have a lot of long coast, so we cannot be affected if the sea rises. So we work a lot in this. We work like for 2 years. We make like a public participation of the draft bill, and then the bill was discussed analyzed in the Senate and in the Chamber of Deputies. And after a long work, it was approved. And one of the main focus was it defines a carbon neutrality by 2050. That's what the first country in South America and Latin America that established that by law. Well, this is the new government is in office now, And she's the new minister called Maisa Rojas. She's a scientist. She's part of the IPCC. So she knows the importance of climate change. So she will have to apply this new law of climate change because it has to create like almost 18 regulations about this law. But in the like a few weeks ago, she went to the climate committee to talk about what are the priorities of this new government. And these are the priorities she established. First, to sign the Escazú Agreement. It's a treaty in Latin America about environmental justice and transparency that it wasn't signed in the previous government because we have some doubts about some things about the treaties, especially some relation with other countries. But finally, this government decided to sign it, so it was going to be in Congress for their approval. Also, we have the biodiversity and protected service, the environmental crimes, because we don't have like Brazil, for example, that have legislation about environmental crimes. We have some crimes in the penal code or in special laws, but we don't have a law of environmental crimes. So it was a topic that we work on, but it's been very difficult to get approved this year. The first bill was 20 years ago, and we never have the possibility to approve one because there's starting this discussion between these lawyers about what is the best option, how to regulate it. Also, we have a wetlands law that is a very important type of wetland that is being affected in the Patagonia, in the south of Chile, because they are being extracted for using for agriculture. But the problem is that the wetlands absorb water that then is used by the people for human consumption, and also is the problem because wetlands absorb a lot of CO2. So it's important to keep them. So now this law is being in Congress. We're working in that law for some years, but now it's been in the Chamber of Deputies. And they are also talking about a waste regulation law. We in Chile have the ERP, because the extended responsibility of the producer. We already have this law in Chile. It was approved some years ago, but this is going to be applied since 2023. But I think this law will focus more on the organic waste, because in Chile, more than 50% of the trash is organic. So I think that's the new focus that I think the government is going to try to focus this new regulation, because we have the REP calls ERP law that focus on the make the companies be responsible about the waste they generate. For example, we already make 2 regulations. One is for tires, and the other is for plastic bottles and other type of products. So now they have to continue advancing with that regulations. Well, this one of the bills that we work on, because the biodiversity law, because our protected areas are now in charge of the Ministry of Agriculture. So this new service is the only institution that is missing of the environmental institutionality in Chile. And it's been in Congress since 2011. So it's been a long work. We managed to approve it in Senate, and now it's in the Chamber of Deputies, but the new government said that it's going to try to prioritize this bill in this new administration. And the purpose is to establish more resources and a better management of protected areas, because now they are in charge of agriculture, most of them, but some of them are in the Ministry of Economy, other in Ministry of Culture, some of them in Ministry of Environment. So we have to make a centralized system that has to be coherent and can be help to improve the management of these protected areas. And this is the environmental crimes law. We presented a bill in 2019, but it was a very difficult discussion. We spent like 2 years working in this bill in the environmental committee. Finally, it passed to the constitution committee and is stuck in that commission. But apparently, the new government wants to prioritize this bill also. Another fun fact about Chile is that we have some of the largest and better known copper mines. This is Chuquicamata. and approximately 30% of the copper in the world comes from Chile. And it's very important because, for example, electromobility requires a lot of copper, so it's very essential to change to electric vehicles. You will need copper, and also lithium. That is very important and a lot of them come from Chile. And finally, to close the presentation, in Chile now we are in a constituent process. We have the Constitutional Convention that was approved by a referendum in 2020 by an 80% of approval, and they established to create this Convención Constitucional. This was pushed by some political sectors, and in 2019 we have a political crisis that led to the exit was to create this new convention to modify the constitution, because the constitution of the 1980 has been modified a lot, but it hasn't been able to gain full legitimacy. That's why it's being discussed now in this new constitutional convention. But of course, the environmental issues in these days is a very important topic, and we have in this convention different committees, and one of them is the Environmental Rights of Nature, Common Natural Assets and Economic Model Committee. That's been talking what environmental regulation normative we're going to have in this new constitution. Sadly, in the first stage of this convention of the committee, they made the first report, and they made 40 articles, and they only approved half article. So it wasn't very successful, and this has been very criticized because they have this posture a little maximalist. Like some of them, even they are talking about the degrowth theory. They say that if the country degrowth, it's possible to be more sustainable. But that's been very criticized from some people that say that we are in a developing country. Talking about degrowth doesn't seem very smart or the best option. So that's been a discussion, and this committee has been very complex discussion.
It's not economically efficient.
So because what normally you talk about sustainable development, but talking about degrowth is a theory that's very. It's easy to talk in theory, but when you start to apply it in public policies, it's more complex, because the growth, even you can see that with COVID, a lot of countries have the growth because of the COVID, and the consequence can be seen. So it's a very complex topic. So that's why the first report wasn't very successful, because the postures that they take, it wasn't very popular. Because also in their committee, there's a lot of environmental activists. They were elected in this, so probably that's the posture is a little more extreme, and then in the plenary they were rejected because they considered it was too extreme or too. So that's why they created this second report that I'm going to show. I'm not going to read it, but these are some of the articles that are being approved in the committee and also in the plenary. The first, for example, it refers to the climate crisis that we have worldwide. The other is about the rights of nature. The other thing is that the law may establish restrictions to some rights to protect nature. That's very similar to what we have already in the actual constitution. About waste management. Some other topics is some principles about the environmental principles that are applied today in some laws. For example, the climate change law have some of these principles, but they now want to establish in a constitutional level. They also this is another thing that's been has generated some discussion about the rights of animals, because of course we don't have this old view that animals are things. Now we consider animals like we're guardians of animals, so we have to have a new relation with them. But what is the limit? That's why has been discussed this discussion about if this article can restrict, for example, how you make agriculture or stock or even rodeo that is very popular in Chile. in the rural areas, rodeo is very important, and there are people that say, oh, with this article could be restricted by, but it's a discussion that is going to be in the few weeks and months. And this, other environmental movements, that's been a very important discussion, especially with this treaty of Escazú, that is looking for more participation from the communities in the decisions, especially when there are investment projects like mining or that can affect the communities. And well, what's next in this conventional constitution? First, in these days, it's been discussing. It's been talking about this in the environment committee. A third report. There's a lot of modifications, more than 1,100 modification they want to, and I think the topic is going to be more relevant. It's going to be water. In Chile, we have a water crisis. It has been the last 10 or 20 years, very complex. Especially in Santiago, is the capital. People are already talking about like the next year if it doesn't rain, we kind of have restrictions on water. And in Chile, after we have like a water code that treats water like some commercial thing. So that can generate problem because before the water was more abundant, but now you can't find water everywhere. So they created a new water code that was approved like 2 months ago. But now this new constitution wants to erase all the work that they did in more than 10 years. It was a very agreement in the Congress, but this new convention doesn't want to regulate the same way. So it's going to be a little complex, the water, but I think everyone's agreed that we have to make changes in how we regulate water because the system is not working. But what is the solution? I think that's going to be a challenge for the convention and even for the Congress. And the final proposal of the constitution will be voted on September 4th of this year, and it has to be approved by the 50% of people. A few months ago, everyone thought that it's going to be approved without doubt, but in the last weeks, there's been some polls that are saying that the rejection is almost tied or even up from the approval of the proposal. But we're going to see what happens with this new proposal of constitution. But it's going to be a very complex and challenging discussion in Chile. Thank you very much.